I spent years of my life in good girl conditioning. If you're not familiar with this term, you will be familiar with these: saying yes when you mean no, agreeing with people when you don't, avoiding confrontation, promising something that you know is going to put you out, sitting at the back of a room, asking more questions about the person than talking about yourself, and always saying, I am fine when someone asks you, how are you? If this is familiar, this is what we're going to unpack in this video. I'm going to go over how your good girl conditioning have developed, why you are such a good girl, and I am also going to share with you how to stop being a good girl and live your life in your self-authority and with clear boundaries. So let's go. Hi, if we have not met before, my name is Shay. I'm a traditionally trained therapist, and I now coach women who are struggling with good girl conditioning, self-doubt, and procrastination. And I move them from inaction to action with safety in their body. Disclaimer: I am still partially a good girl. This shit goes so deep that it is so difficult to take the roots out. Our imprinting age is usually between 0 and 7, and this is usually the time we learn to become good girls. But what I'm going to share here with you is that how to bring awareness to your good girl conditioning, all those little micro behaviors that you don't really realize you're doing because you're a good girl, and then what to do once you actually have that awareness. How do you start implementing changes? So let's begin with an example. This is exactly what I experienced the other day. I was having a meeting with a teammate, and I again caught myself being a good girl, and this is exactly what I was doing. Before he even said a word, my response was, yes, sure, of course, of course. And then I became aware that I was being a good girl again. And I knew exactly what I needed to do in order to step back and realize that I have my own self authority and I don't have to agree to everything before it was even spoken. And I am going to share with you how to do that as we continue. So, who is a good girl? So, I already mentioned some of the micro behaviors that good girls usually have, such as agreeing to things, saying yes when you want to say no, smiling all the time, being pleasant all the time, avoiding confrontation, avoiding seeming difficult, always making sure that you're easygoing. Okay, so you are a good girl. But what has it been costing you? So you might think to yourself, well, why is it such a bad thing to be a nice person? But good girl conditioning is not about being nice, right? It is really about putting yourself out, overriding your own needs, abandoning yourself. You're overgiving. You're over apologizing for the things that is actually nothing to do with you, that is not your fault, and putting others before yourself. And consequences, I probably don't even need to tell you. You're feeling exhausted, you're feeling burnt out, and on top of that, you even struggle possibly to talk about it with people, because good girls do not make problems. And also, again, on top of that, good girls are also the strong ones. They're listeners, they're caretakers. They are the people who people goes to talk about what is going on with them. And even though as a good girl, it might look like you've got a lot of people around you, you're probably still feeling quite lonely, with exhaustion, with constantly over giving. But it's okay, because we're about to change this today. Being a good girl is tough. And if you're still here, I'm pretty sure you are feeling the impact of being a good girl. So let's now think a little bit about, where does that come from? Why are you a good girl? How did you end up being a good girl? There are definitely multiple layers to this. Patriarchy is one. Like, it's almost like women have already been trained from get-go to be submissive, to be obedient, to be a housewife, to look after kids, to cook, clean. It's almost like our conditioning before we even really had a say. But say that in the modern world, you can override a lot of those things. But a lot of the time, many of us grew up in environments where there were certain expectations from us. And most of the time, this may really come down to your parenting, early parenting, and some of your school life as well. So I'm going to give an example from myself. I know my story is not unique, but my mother was a very rigid, very critical, very controlling kind of woman. And very early on, I learned that being good, staying quiet, listening, getting out of trouble, staying out of trouble, agreeing, doing my homeworks, not saying anything unless I've been asked, getting punishment when I don't do what I've been asked to do, and many more. So our body has an intelligence. So early on, my little self has learned that actually doing all of those things kept me safe. Kept me safe from what? Kept me safe from rejection, kept me accepted, kept me loved, kept me approved. And so my little girl learned that it is much safer to do all of those things than to speak up, than to cause trouble. Sadly, many of us grow up in parenting similar to this, especially if you're a woman over 35. It's very much likely that you got punished when you didn't listen. The love was taken away from you. You've been criticized, you've been rejected, and it is such a scary thing for a young mind, for a young body. But home environment is not all. Imprinting continues. The bigger part of the imprinting is done between 0 and 7. But as a young person, you go into school and you go through certain experiences. Maybe you had a mean teacher that kind of got you up in front of the whole class and told you off when you didn't finish your homework. Maybe you had a group of people who kept bullying you all the time. And so, again, you learned if you stay quiet, if you stay sweet, if you smile, if you're agreeable, if you don't speak up, you are safe. People say, oh, I don't care what anyone else thinks. And maybe as you get older, you really stop caring as much. But when you are young, being rejected is one of the scariest things. So we do everything possible just so that we're not rejected, just so that we're loved and accepted. So to summarize, this is how you learned to be a good girl. It kept you safe, it kept you loved, it kept you accepted, so that it only makes sense why you became a good girl. And the imprinting goes deep. As you grow up, you might look at your life and you might have achieved quite a few things, but because the imprinting is there and because it is deep, you never learned to undo this conditioning. You didn't develop the skills to understand that this isn't how you have to be. And this is where we are going next. So I'm going to go back to that example I've given earlier. So the example of me when I was speaking with a colleague and I kept saying, yes, yes, okay, sure, yeah, before even they said anything. And the first thing I did was I became aware and I said to myself, Shay, you're being a good girl again, okay? You need to stop being a good girl. You just need to have your own self authority and you can trust yourself. The opposite of being a good girl is not being a bad girl. Okay, it's not like you need to kind of start lashing out to everyone and you need to start creating arguments and you need to start becoming difficult just for the sake of it, that I'm not a good girl anymore. So it's not the opposite of being a bad girl, but it's really just recognizing the feelings that it brings you every time you say yes when you want to say no. Every time you agree to something, every time you promise to something, when you actually don't want to, just become aware because your body is going to tell you, it is imprinted inside your body. Your body is going to tell you, oh, there's something a little bit strange here. It doesn't feel comfortable. This is where the border lines is the border of boundary. When you cross your own boundary, because your body knows, your body is going to tell you, this does not feel right. There's something wrong here. And when you hear that feeling, this is what you're going to do. You're going to remind yourself that you have self-authority, that you don't have to agree to things that you don't want to. And I promise nothing bad is going to happen. In my example, when I realized I was being a full-on good girl, this is exactly what I did. I realized, I took a deep breath, and then I just sat back and listened. And it was hard, actually. And that's the funny thing about it, because it on the outside, all I'm doing is just sitting and listening, looking at them, just listening to them. And my body was like, oh, you have to agree. You have to say something to show them that you're an easygoing, lovely, caring person. But I took a step back and I just listened, even though it felt uncomfortable. And guess what happened? Nothing. He probably didn't even realize the difference because it was something that is within me that I am creating within myself. Coming back to you, I'm going to give you 3 steps. Recognize that you are being a good girl. Take a deep breath, take a step back, and slow things down. Okay? Remind yourself, if you need to, that you have your own self authority, you're a sovereign being. And then, thirdly, challenge that voice that tells you you have to agree, you have to say yes, you have to help, you have to be nice. Just challenge it a little bit, not massively, because that's going to put you on a override and it might raise too much anxiety. We don't want that to happen, because when we are very anxious, we don't learn from that. We only learn when we are in that sweet spot. So if you were to think about anxiety on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being no anxiety at all, 10 being maximum, we want to bring a little bit discomfort, maybe around 5 or 6, so that you start learning that I can respect my own needs and I am okay. I hope this was helpful, and if you found some value in this, give it a thumbs up and see you in the next video.